Hello. This is going to be part 3 of Martin Booth, Cannabis, a History. And I'm back on my tablet on recording this one, so everything's backwards again. Found out my phone, everything's flipped rightwards, and on my tablet's like this. There's probably some way to mirror it or something. It's okay. I'm reading it to you, right? So, part 3. We're still in chapter 2. I'm just going to start right where we left off. Marked it here. About midway through chapter 2. For a long while, cannabis was identified as the magical plant soma, mentioned several hundred times in hymns and chants in the 9th section of the first book of the Vedas, the Rig Veda. However, no proof exists that soma was cannabis, and it is now thought to have been ephedra sinica, which contains an adrenaline-like nerve stimulant alkaloid. Well, some people still think it might be cannabis. Some of them might be cannabis, but yeah. And some people think it might be like a mushroom of some sort, like Amanita muscaria or some other. So anyway, a little bit of a mystery there. Anyway, it was going on. Interestingly, it too originates in China, this ephedra sinica, where it is called ma wang, or yellow hemp. At first in India, cannabis and its resin were the preserve of Brahmin priests and holy men who believed it took them closer to enlightenment and the gods, helping them to overcome hunger, thirst, and pain. Men walking on hot embers or lying on sharpened blades or stakes were said to use it. Only at important religious festivals were the public given access to it. Orthodox Hindus, for whom alcohol is forbidden, would drink cannabis tea, while the drink was often taken on the festival of Dussehra, celebrating a victory of the Hindu god Rama over another deity. Although today forbidden all intoxicants, Sikhs used also to drink cannabis tea on the Gurpurb festival, which is held to celebrate the birth of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, the founder of their religion, in October 1469. Cannabis was also revered by Buddhists. According to a Mahayana Buddhist legend, Prince Siddhartha, who became Buddha, is supposed to have existed for 6 years on an exclusive diet of hemp seed, whilst seeking enlightenment. Apparently, he ate just one seed a day while sitting under the Bodhi tree. Right? In the Tantric religious movement that affected both Buddhism and Hinduism from the 2nd century AD, cannabis played a central role. As with other beliefs, Tantrism was based upon a fear of and a need to quell demons. Spells and mantras were chanted as cannabis was burnt to drive off devils, and it was used in the rituals of meditation and tantric sexual yoga, consecrated to the goddess Kali. Although not an aphrodisiac, the ability of cannabis to lift one onto another plane of consciousness can enhance sexual physicality and create a sense of sexual union. The aim of Tantrism was to create a feeling of oneness in spirit and body, not to concentrate upon the orgasm or pleasure of copulation. When not being used to prolong sex or meditation, cannabis was used to calm the nerves of soldiers going into battle, encouraging them to feats of bravery. It also fought off fatigue. To this day, Bhutanese and Nepalese porters, the beasts of burden in the Himalayan foothills, used cannabis as a stimulant. It was also a common medicine used in the treatment of dysentery, insomnia, and fever. In due course, Bang took on a social role. It was drunk at weddings, presented as a cup of hospitality, and used to oil the wheels of social intercourse. This, not surprisingly, led to what might now be termed recreational use. Unlike alcohol that had to be distilled, or opium that had to be processed, cannabis was literally there for the picking. What was not cultivated could be found growing wild. In a country rife with poverty, famine, and disease, cannabis provided temporary respite from the miseries of existence. With widespread usage, cannabis came to be graded into three types of preparations: bhang, ganja, and charas. The cheapest and least psychoactively potent of these is bhang, the Indian equivalent of marijuana in the West. It was by this name that early European travelers to India often described all the forms of cannabis they came across, consisting simply of desiccated crushed leaves with or without added seeds or flowers. Bhang is smoked, used as a food additive, or made into a sort of boiled tea containing cannabis leaves, milk, sugar, and assorted herbs and spices. In modern India, its usage is, as it has been for centuries, extensive. And this as an aside, I've been looking into India, watching some tourist travelers visit there, walk around the streets and stuff. Chai tea is very common there, and it's becoming more common here. It's called chai tea, and it's really good. They usually use milk, and so bhang is very close to that. Very close. Substitute a few, swap a few things there and there. So ganja is the second grade, right? Made from the dried flower clusters of female plants. The resulting, if cultivated, the plants are raised with care in the absence of male plants. The resulting ganja is a mass of cannabis resin and tightly compressed flowers. It is generally smoked, and it's 2 to 3 times more potent than bhang. The third grade is charas, a high-quality hashish obtained from plants grown at altitudes ranging from 4,000 to 7,000 feet. Traditionally, the resin was collected by hand and purified in warmed copper pans. It was then crafted into small sticks, blocks, or cakes containing up to 40% pure resin. As is the case today, it was stronger than most hashish found outside India. The very best charas is an even mid-brown color. Slightly lower quality charas appears as a green-brown cakes, often flattened in leather pouches called turbas. Usually smoked in hookah-type water pipes, it can also be crumbled into cigarettes with tobacco. In addition, it can be used in mahjong, or as a sweet, semi-alcoholic, variously scented beverage. Aryan expansion was not restricted to the Indian subcontinent. By 1500 BC, their diaspora had reached and settled in Persia, Asia Minor, Greece, the Balkans, Germany, and eastern France. And where they went, cannabis went with them. Aryan influence had impinged upon the Assyrians by 900 BC, who used cannabis for religious purposes, calling it kunubu, with a Q. Q-U-N-U-B-U. Okay? Meaning the drug for sadness. Cuneiform clay tablets dating to around 650 BC, almost certainly copied from older texts, were found in the excavation of the library of the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal at Nineveh on the river Tigris in northern Iraq. The Phrygians, who overran the Hittites around 1000 BC, also used hemp for its fiber. Archaeologists recovered 8th century BC hemp fabrics from the Phrygian city of Gordion. near Ankara in Turkey. Much effort has been expended, especially by those who had wished to lend cannabis an added credibility by giving it biblical connotations and trying to prove that the ancient Hebrews used cannabis. Certainly, the Israelites were in constant contact with cannabis using cultures, but at one stage it appeared as if there was no direct mention of the drug in the Old Testament. In 1936, however, Sula Bennett, writing as Sarah Benetowa, an etymologist working at the Institute of Anthropological Sciences in Warsaw, claimed that the original Old Testament text made positive reference to cannabis both as an incense and a psychoactive drug. Her evidence came from Exodus 30, verses 22 through 33, in which it states, God instructed Moses to produce a holy anointing oil with myrrh, cinnamon, cassia, and cannabosum. The latter, cannabosum, she claimed, containing the root word kan, K-A-N, meaning both hemp and reed, linked to the adjective bosom, B-O-S-M, aromatic, referred to cannabis. Aromatic reed, right? Fragrant cane, like the first chapter was. Previous biblical scholars had translated this as being calamus, a fragrant water plant known as sweet flag. Their error compounded from the oldest known Greek translation of the Bible. Yet the ancient Hebrews used a holy oil to put themselves into a trance during which the voice of God spoke to them. It must also be remembered that the word Messiah means the anointed one, through whom the word of God was given. Subsequent research has supported Bennett's hypothesis, and more recently, it has been suggested that cannabis was widely used in Hebrew temples in antiquity, up until the reign of King Josiah in 621 BC. So up until 621 BC. Interesting. Or Solomon, David, they're before him. Up until the reign of King Josiah, it was widely used, okay, in Hebrew temples in antiquity, during which it was suppressed in 621 BC, although some scholars believe Christ may have used cannabis-based oils in his healing ministry to treat eye or skin ailments. Yeah, there's some interesting books out there if you want to look into that subject. With the ancient Egyptians, the evidence is not conclusive. Hemp seems to have been used for rope. Fragments of hemp were found in the grave of the pharaoh Akhenaten, which is Amenhotep IV, and hemp pollen has been detected on the mummy of Ramses II, suggesting to some, without any real basis of fact, that hemp played a part in funerary ritual in the 2nd millennium BC. Well, it was present. If it's, okay. The ancient Egyptian word smit, it's like SMSMT, okay, has been said to refer to hemp. With stone inscriptions and texts written on papyri supporting its medicinal use as a poultice, enema, sedative, and as a cure for glaucoma. Claims have been made for the presence of cannabinoids in Egyptian mummies, but this may be erroneous, for apparently traces were also found of cocaine, which was definitely not present in Egypt. But was it not? Was it? You can look up cocaine mummies. There's a few documentaries about that. And it has nothing to do with cannabis, but because cocaine is native to North and South America, and it's not found anywhere else. at least now. And there's been mummies found all throughout Egypt's history that have tested positive for cocaine in them. Traces of it in their bodies still. So, um, yeah, a little bit of a mystery. It's actually caused some researchers to think, there's no other really way to explain the presence of the cocaine in their bodies other than that they had to have contact previously to those mummies, or at that time of those mummies, or at the earliest mummy that's been found with cocaine in it from Egypt, that there had to be contact of some sort with this new world over here, North and South America, where coca is found is found there. So yeah, interesting. There's some books being, I've seen that mentioned in other books. Graham Hancock mentions it as an aspect of, one of those clues that make you really question our historical narrative about, seafaring and people from Asia, Africa, Europe coming over here, and then people from over here going over there. The old Olmec heads in South America, as an example, they look very black, like African traits of the faces, and a lot of them, or most of them, they really do, and with facial hair too. So like the black features with facial hair, and see, South Americans didn't have facial hair, hardly any or none. They didn't have any. North American, Native American Indians didn't either. There's no hair other than, the private parts and the head. The men, the Native American, North American men and the Native South American men did not have facial hair. So when you see facial hair, there's Viracocha Quetzalcoatl myth or story, historical story probably, about a white man with a long beard and a pointy hat, even coming and bringing a lot of knowledge to the people in South America at a certain point. Well, in the Olmec heads with the African people's features. So you had back and forth, thousands of years back, cocaine was in the Egyptian mummies. Okay, and there's a lot of other little things too, but anyway, getting back, I just had to go off on a little tangent there. Okay. Alrighty. Get to where I was. That the ancient Egyptians had an extensive knowledge of natural drugs and medicinal plants is irrefutable, but nowhere is there a mention of cannabis or anything that could be specifically identified as cannabis, and surprisingly, no hempen mummy windings have yet been discovered. It would therefore appear that whilst the Egyptians knew of hemp, it did not play an important part in their lives, save perhaps as a rope fiber, and they were either unaware or dismissive of its psychoactive capabilities. We just don't know. Around 800 BC, another migration of Aryans occurred, known as the Scythians or Scythians. Most people say the appropriate way to say it is Scythians, like the scythe that you cut, curved. The Grim Reaper holds the scythe, the sickle and scythe. So Scythians, but for just convenience and because I always, in reading things about them, would just say to myself Scythians. It's just easier, and a lot of people use that interchangeably, so it's not exactly wrong. It's just that it's not probably the most appropriate way to say it. Anyway, clarifying, and a lot of words are like that, in history. So So I'll say Scythians, but it's a Scythians, you know. Anyway. So around 800 BC, another migrations of Aryans occurred known as the Scythians that came from the region of the Altai Mountains in southern Siberia, although they had been trading as far west as Greece before their exodus commenced. They were also trading partners with the Semites in the Middle East, who referred to them as the Ashkenaz, a warmongering race who in the 7th century BC invaded the area now covered by Israel, Jordan, and southern Syria. They brought cannabis with them, and it is through contact with them that Europeans first came to know of it. Herodotus of Halicarnassus, the Greek historian living in the 5th century BC, was the first European to write about cannabis. An inveterate traveler, he journeyed as far afield as Egypt and the Crimea. He was fascinated by the minutiae of different cultures and societies, and recorded a detailed account of Scythian funeral customs. Visiting a Scythian settlement in northeastern Macedonia, he noted how, after the funeral of a high-status person, the Scythians purged themselves in a pit covered with woolen mats and containing heated stones, much as one might find in a sauna. Once in the pit, they took the seeds of hemp and cast them upon the red-hot stones, where they smoldered and gave off more steam than a Greek steam bath. Transported by the fumes, they shouted in their joy. As the seeds of cannabis contain no psychoactive chemicals, it is believed that Scythians were actually casting cannabis flowers onto the stones, but no positive proof exists. Well, yes, of course they were doing that. That's where the seed pod is. So if you had the seeds, and the seeds would pop and crackle. Anybody smoke a bowl or a joint with a seed in there accidentally, you come when it burns to that point, all of a sudden, sometimes they will just go pop, and it can actually be dangerous because the little thing can fly and be on fire. Pop out and fly somewhere. You gotta be careful with that. That's just like you're in a vehicle or something. Anyway, so yeah, so of course a historian that's kind of a foreigner of these people and had just heard these stories and have chronicled it, like this guy did about them. Of course, that would be the thing. You would hear the popping of the seeds when it hit the hot stones, of course. But it was it was the pod around the seed, and the flower, and the rest of the bracts, the bracteoles, the all of that, stigmas. Okay, that actually was being burnt like in there. So yeah. They're all in a big tent, like smoking it out, as we would say back in the day. Oh, yeah, smoking things out. It goes way back. Okay, let's go back. In 1929, the archaeological excavation by a Russian archaeologist called Rudenko of a 4th century BC high-status burial site at Pazyryk in western Mongolia produced sensors that had been fashioned for inhaling smoke, perhaps as part of the burial ritual. These consisted of small cauldrons filled with stones and covered by awnings of leather or felt. In with the stones were discovered cannabis seeds. In addition, clothing made from the hemp fiber was found. And see, yeah, when you burn something in something, if you had seeds in it, of course the seeds, little charred seeds, would be the only thing left in there. Okay, more recently, in 1993, the Russian archaeologist Natalia Polosmok conducted an excavation of the tomb of a Scythian woman of position, in which were found personal possessions, including a pot containing cannabis. Both graves fitted the description of Scythian burial rites given by Herodotus. Okay. Not only the Scythians came under Herodotus' scrutiny, whilst with the Thracians and the Eastern Balkans, he noted that they were expert at working hemp fiber so finely that it resembled linen. A Thracian tribe in Dacia, now Romania, the Getae, Getae, maintain a cult called the Katnobatai, thought to mean those who walk in smoke. Cannabis being a contender for the source of the smoke because of the universal word kan, K-A-N, appearing in the name. Despite the intrusive P, Democritus, a contemporary of Herodotus, knew of a plant he called Potamasgus, or Potomagus, which, when mixed with wine and myrrh, caused delirium. Theophrastus, a Greek botanist, 371 to 287 BC, failed to include cannabis among the native plants of Greece, although he may have been referring to it when he mentioned a plant called Dendromalache, or Dendromalaki. Nor is there a specific reference to cannabis as a drug in the Greek myths, although datura and mandragora were listed as psychoactive plants used in shrines and by oracles. 3 centuries later, Plutarch, 46 to 127, 46 BC to 127 AD. Well, I think they're meaning, I think they left the one out. Anyway, around 120 BC, the Greek essayist and biographer noted that the Thracians often burnt the tops of a plant resembling oregano, inhaling the fumes, becoming intoxicated, and eventually falling asleep. Yet cannabis was not proven to be involved in any of these instances. Once again, speculation is rife. Well, that one, it sure sounds like that's what they're doing. What other plant would you do? Anyway, another cannabis controversy centers upon the drug nepenthe, mentioned in Homer's Odyssey, written in the 8th century BC. It was correctly known as pharmakon, nepenthes, and of Egyptian origin, variously identified as opium, belladonna, henbane, mandragora, and cannabis. It was said to banish sorrow. Indeed, the name consists of the noun penthos, meaning anxiety, with a negative prefix. Diodorus Siculus, a Greek historian from Agirium in Sicily, recorded it was used by women in Thebes. In the Odyssey, Helen, daughter of Zeus, visited one Polydamna in Egypt, who supplied her with the drug. Many years later, at a banquet in Sparta given by her husband, Menelaus, thoughts turned to his old friend Odysseus, of whom no word had been received for a long while. The guests grew depressed with sorrow. Helen, remembering the drug, fetched it and spiked the wine with it. Everyone drank of it and cheered up. Scant though the details are, there has been speculation that the drug was cannabis. This seems hardly likely. Cannabis does not retain its potency over a length of time. On the other hand, opium, a common Egyptian drug and often taken with wine, does. So, yeah, might have been that. The probable truth is that the Greeks knew of cannabis and its effects as a drug, but this knowledge either did not enter the public ambit or was ignored by most, remaining of interest only to priests or scholars. Certainly, Greek doctors in the employ of the Romans possessed a knowledge of cannabis. Pedanius Dioscorides, circa 80-40 to 90, a Greek physician who was a Roman army doctor and traveled widely on campaign throughout the Roman Empire, studied many plants, gathering his knowledge into a book he titled De Materia Medica, on medical matters, published about AD 70. It became the most important medical tome of the next 1500 years. Irrefutably included in it was cannabis, both Cannabis imeros and Cannabis agria, the male and female, respectively. Dioscorides stated bluntly that the plant which was used in the making of rope also produced a juice that was used to treat earache and suppress sexual longing. He did not mention its psychoactive potential. That was left to another Greek. And that one was Claudius Galen, circa AD 129 to 199. Was born to Greek parents in Pergamum, a Roman city in what is now Turkey. After studying medicine at the behest of his wealthy father, he became a doctor attending gladiators, their wounds often being horrific. He learned much about anatomy and physiology, publishing his findings and thereby elevating his importance to that of Dioscorides. In about AD 160, Galen wrote that hemp cakes, if eaten in moderation, produced a feeling of well-being, but taken to excess, they led to intoxication, dehydration, and impotence. Oh my. Both the Greeks and the Romans traded in hemp for its fiber. At first, the latter raised virtually no domestic hemp crop at all, importing it from the far-flung corners of their empire, which reached as far east as the Caspian Sea, well into the heartland of cannabis. But by the 1st century BC, the rapid expansion of the Roman navy placed such a demand for hemp fiber for the making of rope and sails that Roman settlements in the region of the Volga started growing hemp, along with those in Palestine and Mesopotamia. It was only a matter of time before the Romans decided to begin cultivating their own hemp supply. The Greek historian Pausanias stated that hemp was being grown around Elis, in the west of the Peloponnese in southern Greece, in the 2nd century BC. The Roman satirist Lucilius wrote of it in 120 BC. In his 37-volume Historia Naturalis, published soon after his death in AD 79, Gaius Plinius Secundus, Pliny the Elder, noted that hemp made exceptionally strong rope and went into detail about how it was prepared and graded. Hemp as a source of quality fiber had well and truly arrived in Western Europe. Okay, that's the end of chapter 2. And the beginning of chapter 3, I'll tell you the title of it. It's called A Fiber for All Seasons. So that'll be the beginning of part 4. And I'll make this one a little shorter than the first 2 parts. And try to make them a little, around 30-minute mark. But yeah, great. So we kind of, from part 2, we started there in China, and what he did all through chapter 2, you see it. He's establishing the history of it, evidence of it going to Europe and to the Middle East, into the Middle East, moving that way and into Europe by way of the Middle East, Turkey, Caspian Sea, like it was mentioned. The lands between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea, very important all throughout that time and later, um, for a lot of reasons. So, but yeah, this was all pre-Islamic times in this chapter. We got to about just after AD, 100, 120 AD. But yeah, as you can see, kind of he goes back and forth a little bit. We talk about 3rd millennium BC in Egypt, and then he goes to the 600 BC Herodotus. So that's how a history book does a lot of times. And you just got to follow that way. And so yeah, next chapter will probably be interesting. I don't remember. I don't remember this book. So it's cool, I'm not reading it before I do these again. These videos, I'm not reading it again. It's been like 13, 14 years since I read it. So I'm reading it again with you all, and it's like a rediscovery because I don't remember what's in there, even though hopefully I retained some of it in my head. So yeah, covered a lot there. So hope you liked it, and look for a part 4, which will be the beginning of chapter 3 of Fiber for All Seasons, coming up soon. Y'all have a good evening, good night, blessings, and I'll see you later.